Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Ask Katie Anything. I'm your host, licensed marriage and family therapist, Katie Morton. I'm so glad that you're here. Before I jump into today's topics, I want to remind you to pre-order my book, Why Do I Keep Doing This? The link is in the description, and pre-orders really help us authors. They not only will help dictate what bookstores will carry the book, but also which cities I will stop at on my book tour. So get it in the link, okay? Now today, we are going to talk about what to do if it felt like no one ever showed up for you, but part of you is still kind of waiting to be saved. And what if the place that's supposed to be safe, like therapy or school, actually made everything feel worse? In this episode, we're going to dive into some of the hardest and most vulnerable questions I've received, from navigating eating disorders that are wrapped up in craving care, to feeling broken after betrayal, to figuring out how to keep living when you didn't expect to survive this long. We'll also talk about what it means to have trauma, especially sexual trauma, even if you've never been assaulted in the way that you think, quote unquote, counts. Whether you're trying to build trust, find motivation, or stop invalidating your pain, this episode is for you. The first question asks, it says, "Hi, Katie, I hope you're doing okay." I am. I hope you're doing well. My question is, how do I get over the fact that no one is going to save me, and how to not be attention seeking? I've had an eating disorder for years, through part of elementary, middle school, and halfway through high school, and it is still going as strong as ever. I've gained and lost, been heavy and thin, but still it's never enough. I'm constantly wanting someone to notice, not my mom or dad, but people like my teachers, coworkers, my therapist, coaches. I don't want them to stop me. I just want them to feel concerned. My parents know I have an eating disorder, which they did not react well to. They act like it doesn't exist. Hold on to that little nugget there, because we're going to dig into this. My therapist is also aware, but my eating disorder has only gotten worse since seeing her. Even though I gained lots of weight, my behaviors have significantly increased. I'm too scared to tell my therapist that I'm constantly craving attention from others relating to my eating disorder because it's so embarrassing. It's so weird because I don't want people to know about it because the behaviors are embarrassing. And I also do not want people to jump in and stop me. I'm so lost in why I am this way, and I don't know what to do. The first piece that's important to address here is the fact that we all need attention. I know it gets a bad rep. People talk about like, oh, you're so attention seeking, or oh my God, you need so much attention. And people say it as if it's a bad thing, like we shouldn't need any. But the truth is that all humans need attention. Attention is not a bad thing. We need to be noticed. We need to feel seen, heard, and understood. Those components help our nervous system feel calm, help us feel safe and okay. Now, obviously, acting out in the hopes of getting someone else's attention isn't the best way to achieve that. But for a lot of us, we don't know how else to get the attention that we so desperately need, okay? And it's need. It's not just a want. It's something we need. Now, being attention seeking isn't a bad thing, okay? I want to throw that out there. I believe, based on your question alone, the fact that you said your parents didn't react well to finding out that you had an eating disorder and they act like it doesn't exist. There is a nugget. If you were in my office and you told me this, I would just take this little snippet and figure out how that experience, like what that experience was like for you when your parents found out and then they just act like it's no big deal. Because I have a feeling there's a pattern of behavior potentially in your life between you and your parents where things happen that are a big deal to you and they pretend like they're no big deal or that they don't exist at all. Therefore, in order for you to get the support, the help, the need, and in this case, at least the acknowledgement of your pain, you have to do it in a very overt or attention-seeking way because they aren't giving it to you otherwise. Does that make sense? If not, let me reiterate. Now, if they're acting like your eating disorder doesn't exist and they didn't react well when they found out, then of course you're going to try other ways of having that pain and that struggle acknowledged. Hence why you're wanting other people to notice. You want other people to be concerned, and you want them, you don't want people to know about it because the behaviors are embarrassing, but you do want them to jump in and try to help, like, quote unquote, save you. And I think therein lies like what I would call the root of your eating disorder. I think your eating disorder exists because you feel probably overlooked by your family, at the very least emotionally neglected, like they're not supporting you. The fact that your parents aren't acknowledging you as a person, you don't feel seen, heard, and understood. And now that you're struggling and having a hard time, they're not acknowledging that either. And so it's almost like your whole life, you just never felt seen, heard, and understood, or valued, or important. And so you're trying in any way possible to get that. And that's why you said it doesn't even matter if it's your mom or dad, it's teachers, coworkers, therapists, and coaches, because you've kind of moved on. It's almost like I've talked about this in the past, that when we have maybe a parent who can't give us what we need, we go out into the world looking for other people to fill that parent void, that hole kind of in our heart that a parent was supposed to fill. We go looking for it in other people. And so it sounds like you've kind of done that. You're looking for your teachers, your coworkers, your therapists, your coaches to all notice, and you're wanting them to maybe offer you what your parents didn't. And it makes sense, right? You're doing the best you can with what you've got. And so in general, that's why this is happening. That's why you're feeling this way. And your therapist, I would keep talking to them about it. And I might even tell them like, hey, I asked this question online to a therapist and she brought this up. I'd like to talk about that. And I know you're probably like, Kate, I don't want to talk about that. I know, but we're going to need to, because this is the reason your eating disorder exists. Your eating disorder is always a coping skill. I know maybe you haven't talked about this in a while, but they're not about the food. They're about what they help us numb out from, what they help us escape from, what do they distract us from. And in your case, it's that emotional neglect. It's that feeling like I don't exist, like I'm not important enough for my parents to make a big, statement or do something to help me or acknowledge me or my pain, right? And so your eating disorder is there. It's a way for you to try to forget about that, stop feeling so neglected or hurt or whatever. It does that for you. And so, yeah, I mean, I could go on and on. You guys know this is my specialty, so I could really talk about this at length, but that's really why you have that craving. It's very normal. It's to be expected given, the way that your parents reacted. But please keep talking to your therapist about it, because we have to figure out a way to probably do some inner child work, maybe communicate better about our needs. Maybe your parents come and do a session in a while, not right away, in a while. So maybe they can hear it from your therapist. There are things that we can do to move this forward to help you feel more supported, more seen, heard, and understood, and all that important stuff. So just trust me, it can get better. Keep talking to your therapist about it, okay? Moving on to question number 2, it says, about a year ago, my ex-boyfriend hurt me by touching me after I begged him to stop. I'm so sorry. Since then, I've been thinking about it almost every day. And being at school, the place where it happened, makes me feel physically sick. That's very normal. A big part of PTSD is that we avoid situations or places that remind us of the trauma. Now, I'm speaking about this like I think this was a trauma for you, obviously, because you're still having this reaction to the place where it happened. I just want you to know that that's very common in PTSD, okay? So, the place where it happened, it makes me feel physically sick, anxious, and scared. It's been over a year, and every time school starts again, those feelings come back really strongly, especially when I'm in the area where it happened, of course. Because of this, my eating disorder and self-harm have gotten worse, of course. And it's been really hard to manage. I told my therapist about it before, pretty quickly after it happened, but we only spoke about it for a few minutes and never brought it up again. Also, my parents found out somehow, even though I never told them. Did they tell you how they found out? I'd like to know. And they forced me to tell them the whole story and tried to make me go to the police. This has been really overwhelming, and I don't want to continue to live feeling this way. I want to understand why school makes these feelings so strong every year. I also don't know what I'm supposed to do to make this better, because my therapist basically swept this under the rug, but I still feel it is deeply affecting me. I feel unable to say out loud what happened. Thanks for your advice. I hope you're doing okay. I am. I'm so sorry this happened to you. There's a couple of things here. Of course, your eating disorder and self-harm are coming back with a vengeance. Remember, they're coping skills. They're ways of numbing out. They're the ways that we distract ourselves from the pain that we feel. And what happened to you is extremely distressing, and you're still affected by it. And every time you have to go back to school, which is unfortunately 5 days out of the week, you're like triggered again and again and again. And so my encouragement is for you to bring it back up with your therapist. I know you don't want to. I know it feels uncomfortable. I know you don't even want to talk about it anymore. That's the best way we have to get you out of this. It's like we have to go through it. And I know that sucks. I know that's a shitty answer. I wish I could tell you, oh, do this, that, or the other, and it'll presto fixo. I mean, we could try EMDR if you're able to switch therapists or therapies, like types of therapy. We could try EMDR, which is It stands for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, and essentially like bilateral stimulation. So your eyes go left to right, left to right. And that's supposed to give your brain another opportunity to process a traumatic or overwhelming event. We could maybe try that out because you don't have to talk everything out in detail like you do through like talk therapy, traditional talk therapy. That might be something to look into. But overall, I would bring it back up with your therapist. I hate that they swept it under the rug, but we maybe need to tell them that this is a big deal to us, because I will be honest, therapists can't read our minds. It'd be awesome if we could. But we can't read your minds, and they may not realize just how deeply this affected you because, again, we don't know unless you tell us. And so your therapist might just need you to say like, hey, this is still affecting me. And I still find it really distressing. And, every time I go to school, I feel sick, anxious, and scared. Once they know that, then, maybe they'll take more action and help you work through this more. They may just not realize that this is something that you really need to talk about. And that's the tricky thing about therapy, right? Is we don't know what you don't tell us. And I know you've mentioned it once. I'm not saying that you haven't brought it up. I'm just saying we don't always know how important each and everything you bring up is. And if you don't tell us like, oh, this is deeply affecting me, I just can't get over it, I feel this way, and school is so uncomfortable, then we might not realize. They might have just taken a note and been like, okay, well, if this comes back up, we'll visit it, and you're like, no, we need to talk about it now. So I would bring it back up with your therapist. I would ask your therapist if they told your parents. I'm assuming either the school told your parents if the school knew, or your therapist if you're under 18, but you hold the confidence in therapy, and they should always tell you before they tell your parents. I understand that they tried to get you to go to the police. That's obviously your choice. I don't want you to feel pressured, but at least they were doing their best to protect you. And, I know that's uncomfortable. It's overwhelming, but I'm glad at least they believed you and they were there for you. Yeah, I guess those are my thoughts. Talk to your therapist more. We're going to have to talk it out. That's the thing is I hate the old saying, the old adage, time heals all wounds is bullshit. Time doesn't heal anything. It gives us time to suppress and repress what's going on, but then it's going to bubble up some other way, right? You're going to school, and as soon as you get there, you're reminded of that trauma and you feel physically sick, anxious, and scared. So time's not helping anything. It's just making me feel worse, right? And so I want you to know that we can't just stuff it down. We can't just keep moving forward and think it's going to get better. We're going to have to talk about it. We're going to have to process it through so that it doesn't affect us in our day-to-day. So hang in there. Keep talking about it with your therapist. Let them know this is an issue. If you're like, I can't bring it up in session, maybe email them or text them if they allow for that and just say, hey, I really need to talk about this. It's hard for me to bring up, but it's really affecting me. Or maybe just send them this question. Be like, I asked this question to this online therapist and she told me to send it to you. You could do that too. But unfortunately, we're going to have to talk it out. We're going to have to process it through so that you can leave it in the past, so that the emotional charge and the upset that's attached to it goes away, because it can and will. We just have to, unfortunately, keep talking about it. Okay? Moving on to question number 3. This question says, hello, Katie. Happy Thursday. Happy Thursday. It says, my question is, what am I supposed to do after finding out my mom read my journal? Ugh. Today's episode is sponsored by Green Chef. I love summer. There's just something about this season, more light, more energy. It makes me want to take better care of myself. And that starts with food. So if you're trying to build healthier habits that actually stick, Green Chef is a total game changer. Green Chef is the #1 meal kit for clean eating, and it's made my life so much easier. Between work, podcasting, and just trying to live, I don't always have time to prep healthy meals. But with Green Chef, I don't have to stress. Their new Heat and Eat meals are ready in 3 minutes and still taste fresh, wholesome, and satisfying. They've got 80+ dietitian-approved weekly options, so whether you're gluten-free, plant-based, following Mediterranean or high protein, or even focused on gut or brain health, they've got something for you. Everything's made with real, clean ingredients, organic produce, responsibly sourced proteins, and they take the hassle out of eating well. Plus, it's all super customizable. You can change your meals week to week depending on your schedule or what you're craving. So if you're looking to spend less time in the kitchen and more time enjoying summer while still eating meals that fuel your body and your brain, I use Green Chef and you should too. Make this summer your healthiest yet with Green Chef. head to greenchef.com/50askkatie and use code 50askkatie to get 50% off your first month, then 20% off for 2 months with free shipping. That's code 50askkatie at greenchef.com/50askkatie. Says, my question is, what am I supposed to do after finding out my mom read my journal? Ugh, what an invasion of privacy. I had it hidden in my dresser and my mom somehow found it and showed it to my dad. Why would they go through it? I had very personal things written down in detail, thoughts and feelings I couldn't even imagine anyone else knowing, about my struggles with eating, self-harm, body image, personal thoughts about my parents, especially because my dad is an alcoholic and has hurt me countless times, physically and emotionally. And it feels so terrible knowing that other people, especially my dad himself, knows about this. I want to tell my therapist this happened, but I don't want her to think I'm weird for writing in a journal in the first place. There is nothing weird about writing in a journal in the first place. On the regular, you guys know this, in my practice and online, always recommend journaling. It's a wonderful therapeutic tool. It's a great way to get the spinning thoughts in our head out on paper. And there's something magical or kind of cathartic about getting it out of our head and onto paper, almost like we don't have to keep thinking about it and ruminating about it over and over and over. We can just get it out and leave it there. And sometimes when we see stuff on paper, it can give us clarity or maybe see things from a different perspective that we weren't able to do when it was just running wild in our head, right? I couldn't love journaling more. So your therapist is not going to think that's weird. But the question, how am I supposed to trust my parents again? They get upset. I won't share things with, they get upset I won't share things with them, but I have to trust them. Thank you if you end up being able to answer my question. Of course. Okay. What an invasion of privacy. To be truthful, trust is something that has to be built and it's been broken. So there's not like a boom, you can trust your parents again. My encouragement is for you to talk to your therapist and tell your therapist about it. They're not going to think it's weird that you journal. They're going to be super stoked. Trust me. I'm so happy that you journal, that you have a place you can put all those thoughts. It's really powerful. I talked to your therapist about it because here's what I would want to work towards. And I say work towards because this might be hard. It might not be something you're able to do right this moment, but I would want you to talk to your parents about this when you're able to stay as calm as you can while you do it. And the reason I say that is because we need to stay in our wise mind, meaning the brain, the part of our brain when we can be reasonable. We're not reactive. We respond thoughtfully, right? That's wise mind. I don't want you to be an emotion mind where you're defensive and upset and maybe crying or angry when our emotions are running the show. We don't want to be an emotion mind. We want to be in wise mind, okay? And so I want you to get to a place in therapy talking about this where you can stay in that mostly calm space. We all get upset from time to time, and depending on if they trigger you or say something that gets you agitated, we should be able to stay most of the time, okay? And in therapy, I want you to work towards talking to your parents about this invasion of privacy, asking your mom why she would read it and why would she share it with your dad. Now, I have a feeling her response is going to be because they want you to share things with them. And I would let her know that reading my private journal is not a way to get me to share things with you. In fact, it's actually doing the opposite. And if you really wanted me to talk, you have to have like an answer for them. Because if she's going to say, I want you to share things with me, I want you to tell me more, you're going to have something to say to that. It could be like, well, if you would just ask me, or if we had time to talk during the day, or if you didn't like blame me for things and then ask, I don't know how they're going about it, but some way that they're going about trying to talk to you isn't working. And you could bring it up and be like, well, Dad's an alcoholic. And so I am not going to be able to talk to him because he's unpredictable. And regardless of their reaction, that thought process, if that's your thought process, is completely fair. But with your mother, you have to figure out, how can you talk to them? What do you want to share with them? No one says we have to share everything with our parents. I know parents out there might be upset with that response, but we don't have to tell our parents everything. Everybody on this earth has some secrets they keep to themselves once you're like of a certain age, right? And you have every right to keep your own thoughts and feelings to yourself if you want, or to share them if you want. And that should be something you can do at your own discretion. And so we need to communicate that to our parents, especially to your mom. You need to tell them, like, I don't share everything with you because not all of it needs to be shared. I share with you, what I think you need to know, or I'm going through a hard time. That's why I'm seeing a therapist. Just know that I talked to him or her about it. That would be, how I would respond, but we're going to have to find a way to talk to them because they need to know that what they did wasn't right. Reading your journal isn't acceptable. I'd even maybe mention, like, and now I don't know how, I don't have a safe space to get that stuff out of my head. So I feel a little more lost because of what you did. That's okay to say. There are consequences to actions, and they took an action that I don't think is appropriate, and there's going to be consequences, right? And then let them know, like, I'd love to build my trust back with you, but it's really hard right now. And it just takes time. It's going to take them proving that they can be trustworthy, right? Like not going through your things again and actually sitting down and asking you how you're doing and listening, and doing their best. Maybe they come into a couple therapy sessions to figure out how to talk with you and not freak out. And I say that because I've done this for years, especially my eating disorder and self-injury patients. Their parents, even if they're adults, their parents have a hard time knowing that this goes on, and they don't try to do anything to quote unquote fix it. It's really hard for parents to not want to fix because they love you and they don't want anything to be wrong with you, and they think that they've done wrong and now something's, wrong with you. And it's like, it's very messy for them. And so therapy can be a great place for the therapist to take the lead and to tell them how they can show up for you. I used to do it all the time. I'd always tell the parents, like, hey, I know you want to fix. I know you think if you just make enough food that they'll eat it, or if you ask them to see their cuts that they'll stop, or you take away the things they use to harm themselves and they won't do it anymore. None of that's going to help because, and then I talk about the root reasons and why these things exist. And then they can maybe see it for what it is. And then we have to offer them some tangible things they can do to help you feel better. Like, what can they do? That's a big thing. Parents always need to have like some to-dos. Now, I cannot encourage you because your father's an alcoholic. I cannot encourage you enough to get into Al-Anon. It's AL-ANON. There's online groups. There are in-person groups. I think in-person is better. There's also, I don't know how old you are, but there's adult children of alcoholic groups as well. Those are all really, really great groups for you to get connected with so that you can start talking. It gives you another safe space to talk about the issues that you have with regards to your dad, because that's one group of people that are really going to understand. They're going to be able to feel for you in a way that other people can't because they haven't been in your position. Right? People who haven't had an alcoholic parent don't know what it's like to have an alcoholic parent. And those groups can be incredibly healing. People can share things. There's no crosstalk, so no one's going to try to like help you. But through other people's stories, you can really learn. And so I really want to encourage you to join Al-Anon. They even have Alateen if you're a teenager still. And then, like I said, the adult children of alcoholics. That's all really, really helpful. And you can go with your mom if she's open to it. I don't know. You might want to go on your own. It's up to you. But please talk to your therapist and know that trust can come back, but they have to earn it. It's not something that can just be freely given, especially since they broke it. And we need to communicate that with them. Okay. Moving on to question number 4, it says, hey, Katie, how do I break the habit of invalidating my problem and comparing my current self to myself from the past? Oof. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. These days, it feels like there's advice everywhere. Do a cold plunge, journal every morning, take a break from screens, meditate, breathe. It can get overwhelming fast. And while a lot of that can be helpful, it's hard to know what actually works for you. That's why talking to a licensed therapist can make such a difference. Whether it's learning how to set boundaries, build healthier coping skills, or just having someone to talk to, therapy helps you cut through the noise and focus on what really supports your mental health. BetterHelp is the world's largest online therapy platform with over 30,000 therapists and more than 5 million people served worldwide. You can connect with a therapist from the comfort of your own space, and if your first match isn't the right fit, you can switch at any time. With an average app score rating of 4.9 out of 5, based on over 1.7 million reviews, BetterHelp makes getting support more accessible and flexible than ever. As the largest online therapy provider in the world, BetterHelp can provide access to mental health professionals with a diverse variety of expertise. Talk it out with BetterHelp. Our listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/KatiePod. That's betterhelp, HELP.com/KatiePod. Katipod. Moving on to question number 4, it says, hey, Kati, how do I break the habit of invalidating my problem and comparing my current self to myself from the past? Oof, yeah, it's tough. It says it sounds silly. It doesn't sound silly at all. But I've recently started therapy for the first time ever, and I have some mixed feelings about it. I've been struggling with intense social anxiety my whole life, and in only the last 2 years, I've made so much progress with myself. That's amazing. Lots of journaling. See, journaling is good, and generally taking better care of myself. I'm so proud of you. It's amazing. However, just recently, my anxiety got a bit worse again, and this time I decided to start therapy. Wonderful. I just had my first couple of appointments. It went well, and I felt understood, but now I keep invalidating my problem because I know that it used to be much worse a few years back, and I somehow still manage to live my life without any help. I feel like I'm being dramatic, as if I don't actually need help, but I know I do. How do I stop thinking that? Thank you for all that you do. Ugh, the comparison game, right? If we're not comparing ourselves to others, we're comparing ourselves to ourselves from the past. Just because you were able to survive, because you said you still managed to live your life, even though it was way worse. Just because you still managed to live your life doesn't mean that that's how it should be. That also doesn't mean that you aren't like needing help now. One doesn't negate the other. Do you know what I'm saying? You're acting as if because you were able to live your life back then in a probably barely, like white knuckling, like having the shittiest time, because you're able to like push through and get through it, that then now you suddenly don't deserve help because it's not as bad. Like it has to be way, way, way worse for you to get help. Like who does that help? That makes it like actually harder for you to get better. I'm just doing some fact checking with you. So that's one of the first tools that I would encourage you to do is check your facts. Meaning we're having these thoughts that I don't deserve it, that I'm being dramatic, that I'm not sick enough to get therapy, that like I shouldn't be getting support, like whatever. We have all these thoughts. But I need you to check those, like do not accept those thoughts as facts. Thoughts are not facts. I have this thought table that a member of the Patreon community sent to me, and everybody kind of loves/hates it. I love it. It's beautiful. And essentially the top of the table, this part is the thought. And in order for that thought to stand, for it to be something that we can accept, it has to have 4 facts to support it, 4 legs to your table. And so then there's these little, they have, that says fact on the little leg, and they have magnets to attract them to the corners. It's very cute. I wish I had it with me, but it's in my office. But anyways, these 4 facts have to exist for the thought to stand, or it can't stand. And so for every one of these thoughts that you're having, that like, I am being dramatic, I don't actually need help. Do we have 4 facts to support either of those? We do not, right? Because you're still having a hard time. You still need support. Therapy is beneficial. You did a lot of work on your own to help you improve, but it's still getting bad. And we decided to get some outside support. Amazing. So check your facts. Thoughts are not facts. Having a thought multiple times doesn't make it a fact either. You can have a thought a million times in a day and it doesn't make it a fact. Our brain just likes to pull those things up. And if we allow them to exist without checking them, we accept them. And so I want you to stop doing that. I want you to pay attention to these things that you're telling yourself, these thoughts that you're having. And I want you to be like, Kati said I have to have 4 facts or that thought doesn't stand. And you will notice that you do not. So I challenge you, that's the homework. But I think the bigger piece is to talk about this in therapy, because you have a therapist to offer support and guidance as you work through this, because what you're going through, this comparison, this like, I could do it before, how come I can't do it again, is very common. And part of the reason we can struggle with these types of thoughts is because it's minimizing and invalidating is incredibly common. It's a common way we talk to ourselves. What I mean by that is that we try to minimize our problems. We try to invalidate our bad experiences as a way, honestly, of us continuing to live. It's like our brain and body's way of being like, we will sustain, we can do this anyway, and pushing forward. And so that's really why we're always like, oh, it really wasn't that bad, or I can do this, I can push through. We do that because it helps us keep going, right? Sometimes when shit's real bad, we can keep pushing forward. But honestly, We all could deserve some extra support. We don't have to be at a certain level of pain or distress in order to be, I don't know, like to meet, quote unquote, meet the criteria of needing therapy. Like everyone can benefit. And so again, we're checking facts, we're pushing back. I want you to acknowledge that, hey, this minimization, this validation, it got me through in the tough times when I didn't have this support, but now I have this support. And so instead of taking this on as a whole nother problem, how about instead I talk to my therapist about it? Because I have a feeling that it probably invades other areas of your life, not just this one. Meaning that there's probably other parts of your life where you think about yourself in a negative way, that you put yourself down, that you act like you're being dramatic or think that you're like, quote unquote, needing too much or taking up too much space, or you're just too much in general. Like I have a feeling we might have that like repeat type of experience in all different facets of our life. So bring it up in therapy and check those thoughts with facts. Check your facts. 4 facts to stand. It works. Do it. And then report back. Okay. Moving on to question number 5, it says, hey, Katie, happy Thursday. Happy Thursday. It says, how do I find something to look forward to when I didn't expect to continue surviving after high school? For context, I've had multiple suicide attempts within the last year. I have a history of childhood sexual abuse, depression, panic disorder, and complex PTSD. With no college acceptance in the fall to look forward to and no friends, I'm basically useless to society. I'm going to stop there because that is a huge jump. Nobody said that you had to have a college acceptance and a shit ton of friends to be useful. I think you're useful. Those things have no relevance to that from my view. So I want you to stop accepting that as fact. That's not a fact, okay? Let's continue on. I tend to push people away because I have trust issues, as my past sexual abuse was from a parent. I'm so sorry. So I feel like I will be let down anyway, so why try? How can I build up some positivity and motivation to keep living when it's unbearable sometimes? Sorry if this is long. Thanks for all that you do. Of course, it's not too long. Okay. First of all, I'm glad you're here. I know we had multiple attempts, but I'm glad that you're with us. You're supposed to be with us. There's a reason, right? College isn't for everybody. If you decide you want to apply later, by all means do. But nobody said we all have to go to college. I know that people thought that, and that's how I was kind of raised, but I think it really is not good and also puts you in a lot of debt. So we don't have to go to college, or we can pick something else if we want. As far as getting some positivity and motivation. Now, you guys know that I'm not a fan of toxic positivity. I'm not like, just smile and think and, you'll have a great day. Like, focus on the things to be grateful for. I don't like that stuff. Sure, we can every day practice a little gratitude. Like, what are 3 to 5 things you're grateful for? That's wonderful. That is beneficial. But this whole like negating the negative feelings doesn't actually make us feel better. It's more of like suppressing our true emotional experience. And I want you to be able to feel it all and not get so caught up in it. So here's what I want you to do, okay? We have to build up your resilience. I know you're like, wow, Katie, that did not take the turn that I thought it was going to take. It's because we're so emotionally overwhelmed right now that we probably can barely keep our head above water. There's a lot going on. You've been through a lot and you're feeling really pulled down by life. And so in order for you to fight back, for you to swim and to pull your head above water and like climb onto land and like get a job or apply to college or make friends and do all the things that it sounds like you feel like you either should do or want to do, to even engage in those types of thoughts and actions, we're going to have more oomph. We're going to have more resilience. So that means I want you to be sleeping at least 7.5 hours or more every night. I want you to be getting in bed, not on your phone, with enough hours to make that happen. It doesn't mean we're going to fall asleep right away, and I don't want you shaming yourself if you can't, but I want you to at least try. Give yourself that opportunity, okay? Get enough sleep. I want you drinking water, not pop or soda or whatever you want to call it, not tea, not coffee, not juice, not water, okay? I want you drinking enough. They say 8 glasses a day. I think that's still the thing. Let's shoot for that. I also want you eating regularly, every 3 to 4 hours. Balanced meals. I don't want it to be like lettuce. I don't want it to be pizza. I want it to be maybe a Caesar salad with some pizza. Maybe it's a turkey sandwich. Maybe it's, I don't know, a quinoa bowl with, I don't know, something, whatever. Eating. I want you to treat any illness you have. If you're super sick, you need to go to the doctor. If you have allergies, take an allergy pill. I want you to take care of any kind of ailment that you've got, okay? Because that will really wear us down. And that's kind of the base. That's where I want you to start. And take a shower if you haven't. This is your reminder. Can change your life sometimes. So those are the basic things I want you to be doing on the regular to help build your resilience. And then every morning, sure, we can get up and we can write down a couple of things that we're grateful for. They do prove through research that that does benefit us. It does improve our mood. It does make us more hopeful, which we're trying to build here because suicide attempts mean we felt hopeless. So let's build some of those, hopeful feelings. And then last, I want you to find a therapist. We need to get you more support. There are places, free clinics, cheaper options, even better help. I link in the description. You get a discount. They also have just sponsored my podcast. You get a discount over there too. You can go to Ask Katie Anything and find that, or you're on it right now. Sorry guys, it's been a long day, but you can get some discounts through that. There's Talkspace, there's Cerebral. There's a lot of different brands out there. I want you to feel like you can, access therapy in the way that it works for you, that is affordable for you. And you can find someone that you connect with, because that's the most important thing, is finding a therapist we connect with. So let's do those things. Those are really the most important when it comes to positivity and motivation. It's all about resilience, practicing a little gratitude, and getting more support. We're not meant to do everything on our own. And if we don't have a good group of friends right now, we don't have anybody else to really talk to. And I want you to feel like you have a place to go. I want you to feel like you can talk to people. I want you to have a place to vent about all that you're feeling and thinking and all that stuff, okay? Because it's hard and we all need help sometimes. Being positive and motivated is hard for all of us. So you're not alone, but let's reach out and speak up and do some of those things. I hope it helps, okay? Final question number 6 says, Katie, can someone have sexual trauma even if they haven't experienced sexual assault? I display signs of trauma, dissociation, freeze response during sex, but I've never been sexually assaulted. I've had early uncomfortable sexual encounters, though, and situations where I consented out of obligation. There you have it. Is this enough to cause a trauma response? Thanks. Yes. I know we often think that a sexual assault has to be like violent in some way. That's not always the case. Unfortunately, it can, like, out of obligation, we can do things we don't want to because we feel bad about it, or we feel like, oh, we led them on. Maybe they told us we led them on. Maybe we changed our mind halfway through and felt like we couldn't say no. Things were happening to us that we didn't want. It felt maybe scary. We were maybe afraid to assert ourselves, right? It doesn't have to be a violent act for it to be trauma. Remember, trauma is all about the person that it happens to. It's all about our ability to process and manage what's happening. And unfortunately, sexual assault, sexual traumas are incredibly common, especially for young women, because we don't always feel like we can say no. We don't always feel like we can change our minds. We've been fed these lines that oh, we led them on, or we dressed a certain way and that's why this happened. And so we feel some kind of ownership over it, even though it is not our fault at all. We have every right to say no. I don't care if you've just started kissing. I don't care if you're in the middle of it. You have every right to say no at any stage in a sexual encounter. You have every right to change your mind, to want to leave a date halfway through. You have a right to say, no, let me out of the car and get out. You have every right to remove yourself from a situation at any time that you need or want for any reason. And I don't care how you dressed. I don't care what you said. I don't care what they thought. It doesn't matter. It's your body, and you have a right to say yes or no accordingly. And I just have to say that because not enough people talk about that sexual assault doesn't always look violent. It can look like us just laying there and taking it because we feel like we can't say no. And that's enough for it to be traumatizing, because a trauma means we fear for our own life or safety. Maybe it didn't feel safe to say no. Maybe it didn't feel like we could, and we feel like something happened to us that was very scary, was very overwhelming. Maybe we dissociated during it, right? Because it was too much for us to process in the moment. That's what turns trauma into PTSD. And so, of course, you're having dissociation and a freeze response. You're having a PTSD-like response because of a sexual assault that happened. You've had uncomfortable sexual encounters, and this early on, probably your first few. So for you, sex is a scary thing. It's a traumatizing thing. It's not a enjoyable, consensual thing because it never has been. And so I really want to encourage you to talk to a therapist about this. I want to encourage you maybe to try EMDR or somatic experiencing. Those can be really healing, especially for the body memories that can come up. I also just want you to know that this can be overcome. You can have an enjoyable sex life. If for anybody out there, if the sexual assault or the sexual abuse happened when we were younger, the Courage to Heal workbook is really beautiful and helpful and healing. Do not do it on your own. Do it with a therapist. But for anybody else with the sexual assault, please talk to a therapist. Please, speak up with them, get some resources, talk it out, do EMDR, process it through. If you have girlfriends or guy friends you can talk to about it who maybe been through something similar, do that. But the more we talk about it, the more we process it through, the less power it will have over us. And for the dissociation, the freeze response, we might want to have some tools in our toolbox, like some grounding techniques. I have a whole video. It's old, but it's good. The 25 coping skills. You can just look up 25 coping skills, Katie Morton, it'll come up. But those could kind of help. Maybe there's some process-based or some distraction-based ones, but it might be able to help you stay present or help you process through what's coming up. Just for quick reminders, for grounding techniques, we can look around the room. How many things in the room are brown? How many things in the room are blue or green or black? 1, 2, 3, 4, count them. You can go through your senses. What do I smell right now? How do I feel the chair on my butt? Do I feel my clothes on my skin? Taste, smell, what you see. We can go through all the senses. That can help bring you back as well. If that's too difficult, snapping a rubber band on our wrist, if that's not triggering, I hit the microphone. If that's not triggering for your self-injury, you can do that. Those are just some of the tips that I have, or splashing cold water in your face or dunking your face in cold water. That can be helpful too. Hang in there. That is enough for a trauma response. And to be honest, there is no is it enough for a trauma response? Was it traumatic to you? Are you having a hard time processing it? We can't compare to anybody else because everybody's so vastly different. But hang in there with support and, therapy and grounding techniques. It can and will get better. Okay? Thank you all so much for listening and watching. Thank you for sharing this podcast. Don't forget to pre-order my book, Why Do I Keep Doing This? Have a wonderful week. Do your homework, and I'll see you next time.